Hello everyone, welcome back to Ukrainian Media Podcast Conversation with those who help us make sense of the present by understanding the past. I'm Olena Solodovnikova, and today I'm excited to be joined by Peter Pomerantsev, British journalist and writer. Hello, Peter.
Hey, Olena, how you doing?
First of all, I would like to express my respect for your new book, How to Win the Information War and Propagandist Who Outwitted Hitler. This book is based on the story of how fake Nazi radio stations helped defeat Nazism. As I understand, 50% of German soldiers listened of those media outlets. Are Ukrainians capable to creating content that could have such an impact on Russians today? What do you think?
Yeah, I think Ukrainians already do a lot of great things. I think we'll find out a lot of the stories after the war because a lot of these things are secret, so it's hard for us to judge now. But Delma was doing operations that were so big that kind of everybody knew about them. So for that, you need a lot of resources. So I'm sure that Ukrainians were already doing really great stuff. But to scale this, you need a lot of investment, and I don't think that's probably a priority for the Ukrainian forces, who are very focused on battlefront issues. What we haven't seen really from Ukraine or the Allies is the sort of investment that we had in World War II or the Cold War. So, I mean, you've got to remember that Delma was backed with the full force of the British state. So he had huge investment to do whatever he wanted to do. So, but in terms of understanding the enemy, I think the Ukrainians do that very, very well.
Yes, back to your book. During World War II, it was believed that there were good Germans and a large number of people who secretly believe in democracy and liberal values. However, Europe also believes that it's necessary to work with good Russians to explain them about democracy and so on. And they allocate them the huge grants amount. What arguments are there to convince that this is a road to nowhere, as I think?
Yeah, I don't think there's any huge grants for anything really. Sadly, there's hardly any investment into any kind of communication to the enemy. But what there is more to support Russian independent media, which is largely targeted at exiles now. And Delmas faced a very similar situation where most of the British efforts at the start of the war were aimed at German social democrats who'd largely left Germany by then. Delma called it one part of North London broadcasting to another part of North London. I mean, had nothing to do with the political dynamics inside Germany. Delma didn't think there was any hope for a democratic movement inside Germany by 1941. And he really wanted to reach soldiers, ordinary citizens, and he had no interest in promoting democracy. He wanted to spread the psychological moods and stories that would undermine the German war machine. So it would undermine mobilization, undermine the war economy, get soldiers to desert, get them to sabotage U-boats. So very, very focused on quite pragmatic issues. But in order to do that, you needed to understand why was Nazi propaganda effective in the first place. And so that was his point of view. And yeah, I think it's surprising that the full scale invasion has been going on 4 years, and we still don't have a massive media aimed at Russian soldiers. We still haven't had any kind of massive attempt to undermine conscription. If we ever want Russia to stop and to be defeated, it also has to have difficulties with with the basic functionings of its military and its military economy and society, and for that you need informational pressure as well.
Yeah, I agree with you. And about the Delmer, he betrayed the principles of journalism and in order to convey the truth. Whereas foreign journalists come to modern Ukraine, most of them still make the publish false comments of Russians in order to maintain so-called balance. How can we convince them to not to repeat that false narratives?
You'd have to give me concrete examples. I don't know. I mean, Delman didn't consider what he was doing journalism. He called it propaganda. Today we'd call it strategic communications or something. You know, we'd
Yeah.
find a different word for it. But he was interested in effect. He didn't really. He used the truth actually largely because it was more effective. But he was selecting the truth that would be effective. He did use disinformation, but he tried to avoid it, and usually it often backfired against him. Actually, so a lot of his work was research. A huge amount of his work was research, finding out what were conditions like on the front, what was life like for ordinary soldiers, understanding the petty level of corruption at every level of the Nazi system. So he was very focused on finding the facts, but it was the facts that would undermine the German war machine. So, but he didn't consider it journalism, and he makes no secret of that.
I mean that I know a lot of foreign journalists, they came to Ukraine and say, yes, we support Ukraine at all, but we need to be journalists at all and continue to have a second both side of this war about Russians. And Russians told totally false, totally lie, but they continue to publish it and spread this lie through their international media.
Well, I think it's a problem generally with the type of journalism that wants to give 5 minutes to Hitler and 5 minutes to the Jews. You know, it's kind of a false balance, which I think many media are moving away from now. There's been a lot of discussion about this, and you know the mission of journalists is to get to the truth of things, and there's nothing. I think it's a bad idea of balance to balance truth, false subjectivity, which balances the aggressor and the victim. I think there is actually more. So I think that's kind of encoded into a type of journalism. We have a lot of complaints about it in America, about journalists giving kind of like, here is what Trump said and here's what his opponent said as a kind of balance. I think there is a process of trying to do this better, but it's hard because it is actually encoded in a certain idea of journalism where you're meant to always give two sides, which I think is a very lazy type of journalism because you don't have to do anything. You just take one comment and another comment. That's not really doing anything. So yeah, I think that speaks to a more general crisis, to a certain false idea of balance and objectivity. But I don't work in news, so you'd have to. I think there are changes in newsrooms around this. I think there are some improvements.
Okay, the striking part of your book, you compare your childhood and the main character Delmer with your own. You were born in Kiev, grew up in Germany, Great Britain, and Czech Republic. And how do you think, is it an advantage to be clarified tied to any one identity? Does it give you a helicopter view of the world?
I think it helps. I think my interest in propaganda, this is my third book about propaganda, is similar to Delma's, because when you grow outside, when you grow up outside of different cultures, you see the cultural and information forces that create identity, because you're moving from culture to culture, and you see how books, language, TV shows, propaganda writ large as a cultural force creates who people are. And I think Delma had the same experience. So I think in that sense, it can help. So yeah, I mean, but you have many people who work in propaganda who didn't go through that. So I don't think it's necessary, but it can give an interesting perspective.
Move to the all disinformation topics. I just wondering, why don't you believe in the term brainwashing? Because it's so popular
Yeah,
to
yeah,
explain everything. He was brainwashing.
yeah. Well, look, I think communication generally and propaganda especially is really a communal act. It's both it's like a dance between the people who create it and the people who participate in it. And you can get to some effects through, you can influence people without them really knowing, but for a little bit. But I think at some level, people always understand what's going on. and the idea that they ever enter a completely hypnotic state where they're like zombies who are brainwashed. The idea of brainwashing comes from something similar to that. Comes from American soldiers who were captured in Korea and became pro-Chinese. The idea was that these soldiers had been brainwashed like zombies by the Chinese, and actually no, they'd made a conscious choice to be pro-communist. So I think people choose, if they want to participate in propaganda. We see how many people refuse to, even though they're under the same conditions. And afterwards they say, "Oh, I was brainwashed and I had no idea." But actually everybody kind of knows or at least suspects everything. So yeah, I don't really believe in that excuse. But also I think most communications theory would now say that it's not a linear thing. It's not like propagandist sends out his beams of propaganda and people just, are sort of radiated by it, like a Chernobyl of influence. People take part in it. People want to take part in it. People enjoy taking part in it, and people are ultimately responsible for taking part in it. So I think that's what I would say. And I think Delma had a very similar sense of propaganda, that people are always playing their role in this theater.
Well, there is wonderful idea before that people are rational beings, and so long as you give them the different information, they will choose the best quality. And now the salary-based and rational choice has been rejected by economists and sociologists. Could you elaborate why it doesn't work?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody believes that now. I think there's so much evidence that says that we make choices through shortcuts. If we're talking about cognitive things, that we will reject facts when they undermine our partisan identity or identity as part of a tribe. I'm not saying that we have to give up on facts, but I think you have to create the conditions where people are ready to listen to them, where they want to listen to them. So people can be rational when it suits them, and then they won't when it doesn't. And talking about Russia, it suits most people to reject the facts at the moment. So you have to really, if you're going to operate in the value of facts, which I do, then you really have to work out what are the moments when people might care about them. Yeah, what are the conditions they might care about them? What are the reasons they might care about them? But yeah, there's loads of evidence that shows that people will often reject the facts when they don't agree with their other things that they need in life. There's a very famous study about Republicans in America, where they're given a story about migrants coming into America wearing explosives, and it's obviously a false story. And they're asked, do you think this is true or false? And most of them say they think it's false. And then they're like, would you share it with people? They're like, oh yeah, we'd share it. So the idea of sharing something that your friend group will like is more important than sharing the truth. So being part of the community is more important than sharing facts. And people know that. They're not conned, they make a conscious decision of like, this is more important to me than fact.
Yeah, unfortunately. And how do you assess the threat of the artificial intelligence in search and distorted information? Whether this tool makes humanity even more primitive or imposes uniform thinking like that?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, the answer is we don't know. And there is so much speculation about AI that it's almost a genre unto itself. And often it's reflective of people's attitude towards technology companies, towards towards their opinion of democracies in general. But what we will probably see in terms of propaganda is it'll get even more targeted, and we're already seeing that. So Sefton Delma, my hero, he uses a lot of pornography in his propaganda. Sorry. And he his pornography is general. He sort of sends out leaflets of German wives sleeping with Italian soldiers while German soldiers are at the front. But now you'd be very specific. You would create pornography with a picture of, the girlfriend of a soldier, and she'd be talking to the soldier and she'd be engaging with him. It'd be very, very personalized. You'd be able to create a message that is tailored just for you. And we're already seeing that. There's been a recent leak of Chinese use of AI in Taiwan and Hong Kong by a company called Galaxy, which are doing exactly that. They're creating chatbots which are individually targeting people and engaging them. So instead of trying to reach 10 soldiers, you can reach one soldier. So it'll probably get more automated, more concrete, more narrow. And that's, you don't need a troll farm anymore. AI can do all the work that trolls did. So there's clearly going to be a tsunami of inauthentic material. And the question is, what does that lead to? I think it'll lead to people trusting even less. Information integrity will be a privilege for the wealthy, basically. Most people won't experience it. And most people will live in this sort of bath of AI generated content, which will be very individualized, but completely fake. And then maybe the elites will live in a place where there's real content. So there'll be that division, firstly. But secondly, who do you trust in this world? And that's the question we're already facing. Who's going to be the trusted communicators? And, that's changing every day. It's definitely not going to be the media. Well, it doesn't look as if it's going to be the media. Maybe it'll be companies. Maybe it'll be the armed forces or a battalion. Khartia or Tretya Shturmovaya will be my media because I trust them. They defended me. Or maybe it'll be micro influencers who are trustworthy because they're like you. So we don't quite know where the question is, where is trust going to be generated from in a world where you can't trust anything? And look, we're already getting that way. But I think it'll accelerate. So yeah, that's our future, and we just need to embrace it.
Yeah, that is awful to thinking about it, this future. But about the technologies in disinformation, about algorithm, which essentially determine everything you see and prevent intelligent ideas from becoming accessible because you are supposedly unpopular with the masses. How should we deal with this? So we can't spread new information, new faces, because if you spread this information, it was very low access to the audience.
Yeah, I mean, what can I say? So the algorithm has been the most important thing for the last few years. We've really been defined by the choices algorithms make, and the people who control the algorithms have the great power. And that's why Russia is quite successful in this space. It has platforms that control algorithms. And I think that'll continue. But I wonder if AI is a new chapter. Yeah, because that's less about algorithms. That's more about conversations that you're having with a fictitious character. A bit different. We'll see. Well, the way it is now, I mean, interacting with an AI feels different to an algorithm. An algorithm is feeding you. It's this word, the feed. You open it and it's like, oh, you're being fed on this junk food, moving bull feast of outrage and desire.
Yes, and the
and
same
narcissism.
junk food, the same, not differences with this junk food.
And kittens, yeah, and sometimes just junk food and kittens, and lots of kittens. But it was very passive, AI is different. AI, you're talking to it. I don't know. I've been using it a lot. I'm starting to use it quite a lot. You're talking to it. You're not actually getting a feed. You're getting something else. You're getting sucked into a conversation. which feels genuine, but we know that it can be gamed. We know that the largest Russian operations on AI so far have been about just creating so much content in strategic ways that it starts to influence the, you know, the way the AI thinks. So, that's a much more subtle kind of intervention. But I'm so sorry.
Bless you.
So we're kind of getting beyond the usual. I mean, I think we're in a new challenge now. It's been the algorithm up till now. The last 10 years have been the 10 years of the algorithm. But now we're into something else. The algorithm hasn't gone away. It's still there. Still very influential, but increasingly, I don't know if X or Facebook are as important. Certainly not in America the way they used to be. Maybe still in Ukraine where Facebook is so important. But no, I think we're into a new game, and I think we've quite understood what it is yet. But it's it's talking to things, isn't it? It's talking to Siri, talking to Alexa, talking to Gemini, talking to AI. It's this set of conversations which seem genuine, but are actually deeply manipulative. But I think we're out of the algorithm and into something else now.
Okay, my last question was about the fact checking. You are one of the critics of it.
No, I'm not a critic of it. I think it's very noble. I think it's the right thing to do. No, I think I'm not against it. I think it's great. I just don't think it'll solve all our problems.
Yes. I mean that you find that it's not so effective tool now because it's pointless to chase after every small piece of misinformation and explain why it's not true.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And also, we know that people will reject facts when they don't like them. So that's another big factor. Yeah.
Could you explain more why it's not so effective tool?
Well, I think you said it very well. By the time you're chasing after stuff in a time when you can industrially pump out disinformation, you've already lost. If you're going to, I think we need to think about disinformation in other ways. Content is one small bit of it. When we talk about disinformation, it's also about the way things are distributed can be disinforming. So you think it's a person, actually it's an army of bots. And the actor is disinforming, so they're hiding. You think it's an American person online, it's actually a Russian troll. So I think we have to start thinking about what is it we're trying to fact check? Is it the content is the hardest thing to catch because that's just, especially with AI, that's just produced en masse, and trying to run around every one of them is just a wrong use of your time. So you'd be thinking much more about the system. If you want to fact check something, I think exposing the system, the funding behind it, the people distributing it, I think that's much more important and effective if you can then disable it than going after every fact check. So I think that would be think about the machine that produces the lies, not every lie. So that's one thing, like a systemic thing. And the other one is to do with human psychology, where exactly, even if you debunk things, people might still want to believe them. Pre-bunking has been shown to be more effective, and that can be a larger intervention. It's still very reactive, though. You're still thinking about what is the other side going to do? How do you stop them? So that's still very, very negative. But I think pre-bunking has been shown to be more effective than debunking.